What's going on, guys? It's your boy Haiguh back with another Borderlands 3 video, and today I'm going to be sharing another Flak build that I've made. The difference between this build and my previous build is that this one is going to be primarily focused on completing one thing, which is Slaughter Shaft. The other build was for bosses and mobs, but this is 100% for Slaughter Shaft. I made it with only the intention of completing a run of 5 waves, whether you're solo or with friends. But enough chatting, let's go ahead and get into the video. Starting off with the Hunter tree, the first skill we have is Interplanetary Stalker. It's a stacking kill skill, and per stack you get a bonus to all damage dealt. When maxed out at 5 out of 5, you get 10% per stack with the 3 stack limit. Additionally, the skill gives unique bonuses against specific enemies like 7.5% increased corrosive damage against robots, 15% action skill damage against humans, and 7% movement speed against beasts. And these are all again per stack. So those are some nice bonuses, especially the corrosive damage, since in Slaughter Shaft the tanks summon turrets a lot and those turrets have armor and shield for hit points, so dealing extra corrosive damage can help you get rid of those super annoying turrets. The next skill we have is Hunter's Eye, which gives bonuses against specific enemies similar to the unique part of IS. So Hunter's Eye gives additional critical damage against humans, armor damage against robots, and damage reduction against beasts. And we have this at 4 out of 5. This will be nice for extra critical damage against all enemies, and again extra armor damage for those turrets. The third skill we have is Head Count. For every critical hit Flak scores, there's a chance that action skill cooldown is reduced. Since we have it maxed at 3 out of 3, it's a 30% chance to reduce the time by 2 seconds. Honestly, with this and some of the other skills we have, the cooldown for the action skill is super low, which allows you to have it up about 90% of the time, which will be super beneficial as you'll see later in the build. The next skill is Two Fang, which just increases the chance for you to shoot an extra projectile per shot. Since it's maxed out at 5 out of 5, it's a 25% increase, which is just nice for some additional damage. Fifth skill we have is The Most Dangerous Game. When Flak kills a badass or stronger enemy, he gains a buff to gun damage, crit damage, and handling for 2 minutes. That's a super long time, and since there are so many badass enemies in Slaughter Shaft, this really helps out. I have this maxed out at 3 out of 3. Next skill is Galactic Shadow, which just increases our crit damage by 15%. Following that, we have Grim Harvest, which increases gun damage and action skill damage. We have it at 4 out of 5, so we get some nice bonuses out of that. Finally, we also have Megavore, which gives Flak the chance to score a critical on any part of the enemy, not just their weak points or critical spots. This is just an overall good skill, and since we have a lot of skills that benefit critical damage, this is just a cherry on top for this tree. Moving on to the Master Skill tree, we have Persistence Hunter maxed out. This increases Flak's gun damage and action skill duration. Next we have Ferocity. This increases the damage that Flak's pet deals. I usually go for the eyes, which makes the first melee attack your pet hits on an enemy an automatic critical, but the pet we're using also does some elemental damage and can burn enemies, so Ferocity will help out with that. I have this at 2 out of 5. Third skill we're looking at is Who Rescued Who. When Flak deals damage, his pet regenerates a percent of that damage as health, and when the pet deals damage, Flak gains health regen for a few seconds. This is super beneficial for survivability, and it pairs nice with some of the other skills we have. I have this at 2 out of 5. The following skill is He Bites. When Flak's pet is damaged, it returns some of that damage back to the attacker, which is part of a mini circle we have. Our pet takes damage and returns it to the enemies, and we're able to heal our pet with the damage we deal, which means we can keep the pet healed up, which means he can then take more damage, therefore outputting more DPS as well. I have this maxed out at 3 out of 3. Next skill we have is Frenzy. Whenever your pet deals damage, Flak and his pet gain a stack of Frenzy, and for each stack, Flak and the pet both deal increased damage. I have this at 2 out of 5, so it just helps put some extra damage around the build. For the sixth skill, I have Hive Mind. A portion of all damage Flak takes is shared with his pet. I have this maxed at 3 out of 3, so 15% of the damage I take is shared. With this, it allows us to stay alive a bit longer, and with Who Rescued Who, if our pet takes too much damage because of us, we can heal them back up as long as we're outputting damage. Next skill is Mutated Defenses. When Flak's pet is at low health, it gains damage reduction and health regen. As you can see, I have quite a few skills that help improve the survivability of the pet. Keep in mind, I said I made this build with the intention to be able to solo Slaughter Shaft. So as long as your pet is around, that helps keep aggro off of you, which allows you to stay alive longer, therefore being able to put out more damage and kill enemies. Second to last skill we have is Barbaric Yawp. I mentioned in my previous Flak build video that this skill recently got a buff, so having this is super helpful. I have this maxed out at 5 out of 5, but I also have a class mod that gives me 4 points, so I got Barbaric Yawp at a whopping 9 out of 5 points. This increases the power of the pet bonuses by 360%. Final skill we have is Pack Tactics, which just increases Flak and the pet's both damage and health. It was our last point, so we have it at 1 out of 5. As far as action skill and the augments, I'm using the Gamma Burst with Endurance and Empathic Rage. We're able to deal more damage while Gamma Burst is active, and some of the skills allow us to have extended action skill duration, which just makes everything everything feel a lot better. Now for the pet, I'm not using one of the skags, I'm actually using the Spider Ant Scorcher because the Spider Ant gives health regen, and because of Barbaric Yawp being at 9 out of 5, instead of only having 1% max health regenerated per second, we get almost 5%, which makes the build feel a lot less reckless. Also, instead of getting 10% additional elemental damage, we get 46%, which is just insane for damage. You'll see a lot of the weapons I use are element based, so this just makes everything a lot stronger. If you're going to be farming Slaughter Shaft, I 100% recommend farming for good modifiers prior to starting the run. Circle of Slaughter isn't like a boss that you can kill in a minute or two. It's a whole wave based fight that can last for 30 minutes or more, so take a few extra minutes to get good Mayhem modifiers for yourself. All you need to do is exit to the menu and come back until you get good ones. Since I use the Spider Ant, I try to get the modifier that increases elemental damage. But aside from all that, let's now take a look at the items and weapons I have equipped. Starting off with the artifact, I'm using an auto idol. The one I'm using gives fire slide, but that doesn't matter too much. We're more so looking at the kill buff that it gives, which is 18% health back on kills. You can see why this is helpful. It can come on most artifacts, not just the fire slide one, so keep an eye out when you're farming. For the class mod, I'm using a bifurcated friend bot, which is what gives me the 4 points in Barbaric Yawp. The mod also gives your pet an additional 20% damage, and when Flak gets a kill, it also gives second wind to your pet. I cannot explain how helpful this is. Remember how I talked about how having your pet up keeps aggro off of you, and trying to revive the pet if it goes down isn't very easy during Slaughter Shaft. So being able to revive it with just getting a kill makes things so much easier. For the shield, I'm just using a transformer, which gives 100% resistance to shock, which is just nice to have. For the grenade, I'm using a shock Merv hex. This helps get rid of shields and also put damage on the enemies. Since the hex attaches to multiple enemies and does damage over time, it also heals the pet really well. Also, sometimes maniacs can smack your grenades back at you, which will turn your grenade into their projectile. So the transformer pairs well, since if they smack my grenade back at me, it doesn't do any damage to me since I resist the shock anyway. For weapons, I've been using a cryo crossroad, which does a lot of damage and is also good at freezing enemies. Since Flak doesn't have anything that decreases reload speed, freezing an enemy can give you some extra time to reload if you need to. For the second weapon, I'm using a brainstormer, which is just good for getting rid of shields if you're out of grenades, but it also helps to be paired with the grenades to just melt through the shields of enemies. The third weapon I'm using is the Roizen's Thorns. It's a Torg pistol that shoots 1 corrosive shot with 4 incendiary shots that travel around it. So it's good for damage against flesh or against the armor on the turrets or any other enemies that have armor. I like having different weapon classes like SMG, shotgun, pistol, etc. That way you don't have to worry as much about running out of ammo. For the final weapon, I'm using a Searing Zeroed Chaos just so I can have an assault rifle, again in case I'm out of ammo, but this also helps for dealing extra damage against the flesh enemies, and since everyone is human, once you get them down to that red health bar, you can melt them with any incendiary assault rifle. That's pretty much all I have to go over as far as the build goes. I've actually really been enjoying using this build, especially since it's a nice change from using infinite grenades on Moes. I hope you guys can enjoy this build as well, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, a like would be greatly appreciated. But until next time, it's been your boy Haiguh, and I'll see you guys in the next video.